Well, we got in trouble for camping on private property. Well, right here, the pavement ends. Well, right here, Linda and I are starting a trip. It'll be a couple of days long at least. This is the end of the pavement, and from here is about 100 miles of dirt until we reach the next town. But it should be beautiful following the Smith River here in Montana.
Sorry, there's a bull listening to us. I'm sorry.
We'll show you the bull. He's right there listening to every word we say. You don't mess with bulls, though. Anyway, it should be beautiful. Now, we've been down here 2 or 3 times.
Yeah, maybe, yeah, about that.
But it's been a long time. It's been like...
more than 2 or 3 years. It's been like maybe 10 years.
Or more.
Yeah.
And one time we even started down here, and because it rained, we barely got back out. You can't be in here when it's rainy at all. We almost got stuck. But let's go find out what's down this road.
Maybe they've improved the road.
I doubt it.
Never know.
I'm going to ask the bull if he knows.
Yeah, he knows.
Yeah, that's not mud. That's cow manure. That happens a lot here. Well, this is just a lunch stop for us. Someplace with a little shelter from the wind with that hill behind. Because sometimes the wind blows in Montana. Just simple pastrami sandwiches and potato chips. Anything is good with enough mayonnaise and mustard. Well, as you can see, it is beautiful back in here. There's a road coming up pretty soon that'll take us up into the National Forest, which is over to the right side of this road. I got a new housing on my camera and it whistles in the wind. That might not be good. I'm pretty sure that it was right along in here years ago where Linda and I were in a old Ford pickup truck and we got stuck in the mud right here so bad. It was all what we call gumbo here in Montana, and it had filled up the wheel wells so you couldn't even hardly steer. And luckily we had a shovel with us and we were cleaning out the wheel wells and trying to get turned around, and we did get turned around and headed back out, but what a mess. Hello boys, how you doing? Most everything you see here is privately owned ranch land with little spots of state land and BLM, but up in the higher mountain areas is national forest, and that's where we're headed. Well, we're just on foot back in here scoping out a possible camping spot. Well, as far as campsites go, this one isn't much to look at. It's not a campsite. It's just kind of an unused road in the national forest. Sure is private enough. And we're kind of sheltered from the wind here too in these trees. But it's kind of a pretty spot. It'll do. Maybe tomorrow we'll go cruising around a little bit, exploring. We've never been up this Forest Service road. This is a different one for us. See this great big rock right here? Hard to tell how big it is with this wide angle lens, but it's about 30 inches long. Anyways, it was turned over by a bear to get at the grubs underneath it. So we know there's a bear hanging around the area here. And when the wind's blowing like this, bear spray is absolutely useless. So make sure you got a firearm like a shotgun and know how to use it with the proper loads. Well, yeah, last night we found that spot to camp that we showed you. And it was a nice, quiet, peaceful spot. There are not too many people out. And we were having a nice leisurely morning when up pulls the
Fish and Wildlife.
Fish and Wildlife enforcement. He was an armed enforcement officer. And he informed us that we were camping on private land. Now, you know, we're careful all the time.
We use satellite GPS
and the paper map.
Paper maps and you know, reading signs on the road and
yeah, we had passed the sign on that dirt road. It says entering national forest. And we had we showed the officer on our paper map, it showed we were in national forest, and we showed him on the GPS where it showed we were in national forest. But we know all too well that just because it's, and there was no way for us to tell, by the way, that we were on private land, and he recognized that fact. And the paper I showed you is just a warning, which he had to give us. But the thing is, just because you're in national forest doesn't mean you're on public land. And that's
all the time.
Not all the time. And that's because back when, I think it was Teddy Roosevelt created the national forest system in the United States. I think it was. Back when he did that, there was already private land. So when national forest took over an area, they didn't rob you of your land and they didn't buy it from you. You still owned that piece of land within the national forest. So in this national forest, that hill right there could be private land. And the thing is that most of the time it's posted and it'll say private property.
Right.
You know.
And you may be driving on Forest Road number 287, but that Forest Service road can pass through private property. So, which is another way you think you're in national forest.
But you're not always. Anyway, it wasn't our fault. He said that he had been called up there several times to that spot where we were camped because of people that the landowner saw. But the landowner, he's going to tell the landowner he needs to get it posted because he was tired of coming out and talking to people too. So
yeah,
it was just like this, and it didn't look any different. But it was private. We didn't know.
Yeah. Besides private property within national forest lands, there are leased lands.
Oh, good point.
Within the national forest, which means somebody leased the land for grazing rights. So their cattle are in there, and they may have a corral in there, and they may have a lineman shack in there.
They may have a water system in there to water the cows.
And so it looks like private property, but it's not. It's leased, and the public is still allowed to go on that leased land.
My apologies to the property owner. We didn't mean to do that.
Yeah, because we go through that with our private property that has a public road going through it.
And we post our property, you know, no trespassing a lot, and people actually tear those signs down and throw them in the bushes.
Right.
Doesn't make it legal, folks, when you do that. You're still on private property. Yeah. And we put up game cameras. And they'll see the game camera, realize they've been caught, and they'll steal the little micro SD card out of it. That happens to us too. Just real bad. Anyhow, We've been driving all over looking for another place to camp, and there's not a lot available right now, but we're gonna get back on the road and keep looking.
Yep. This is up too high and too cold and
Yeah, I'm gonna get down lower.
too windy.
Yeah, we'll show you what we find. When I said it was impossible to know when you were on private property, I meant by looking at it because it may not have any signs on it or any fences or anything like that. You may just be driving down a National Forest Service road and see a place to camp and not really, a place where you want to camp and not really know that it's private land. The way you can know for sure, of course, is by getting the National Forest Service map for that area. But for us people who are traveling cross country and we're just driving into national forest looking for a place to spend the night, you're not going to be able to afford to have every single map there is. It would cost you a lifetime's wages. I'm kidding, but it would cost a lot of money to have all those national forest maps. They're not cheap, and there are a ton of them for every state. So out here in the West anyway. But if you had a National Forest Service map, it would show you the private property. And of course, you would need a good GPS to show you exactly where you are in relation to that. So there is a way, but not... Well, let me show you some other things, though, that you can kind of tell. Hold on a minute. What I'm about to show you is not a sure thing, but it's just kind of a way you can kind of ascertain if it's private or public. But no guarantees here. It's just what I'm used to seeing here in Montana. Let me show you something. Okay, Linda and I found this nice little spot right here. This is where we've been for the last couple nights. First of all, driving down the road, we went from both directions. We didn't come across any signs that said, private property, next half mile, stay on road. That's one thing you see a lot. When you're driving through a section of private land, sometimes the landowner will post that to let you know it's okay to drive through there, but it's private property on both sides. Then another thing you might see is fences and gates. And then another thing, when we pulled in here, we looked very carefully for any signs there had ever been a no trespassing sign on this piece of property right here, on this section of land. Nothing on the trees where it had ever been posted, no posts in the ground where a sign has been ripped off. Nothing's been posted anywhere. That was another sign to us. This has a nice little creek running through it. Another thing to look for is fire rings, and there's several fire rings here, including one that we're parked right next to right here. Really nice one over here, and a table here that somebody has put together, probably the hunters, because they spend a lot of time here during hunting season. Just a nice fire ring and camp area. And it's well used. That's not a guarantee, but it's a pretty good indication that a lot of people camp here regularly. Now, this is all my fault, because it's stupid me. I got out the National Forest map for this area, for this trip that we're on right now, and then left it sitting on my desk. So this is my fault. I was trying to think of a way it would be Linda's fault, but I just can't come up with anything. Today is a hot day, and I just finished an ice cold glass of chocolate milk, one of my favorite things. So I think right now is a good time to talk about refrigeration, because frequently I'm asked what our favorite refrigerator is, and it's because we've done so many 12-volt compressor refrigerator reviews. So let's talk about that for just a minute, and I'll share what I think. We have 3 refrigerators that we like. One of those is the IceCo TR45. Now, we actually have 2 IceCos. One is at our cabin, and the TR45, and that's a larger one, that's a 55. And then the TR45 is one that we take traveling with us quite frequently. IceCo is a cut above the rest when it comes to quality, my impression. And it's definitely the quietest one of all of them. Linda's favorite refrigerator is the Set Power RV45S, and she's got a good reason for that. The interior compartment does not have a divider in it, So many of them have a divider, so if you set the one side on refrigerate, the big side, the other little side stays about 10 degrees warmer. The set power has one big compartment with two baskets, but no divider, and the whole inside will stay at the same temperature. So if you're using it as a refrigerator, the whole thing's a refrigerator, and if you're using it as a freezer, which we never do, when we travel, we never use freezer. We always only use the refrigerator mode, but then if you use it as a freezer, the whole thing is a freezer, but it doesn't have that separate compartment that makes the little compartment 10 degrees warmer. It's just all one, and she likes that because it keeps all of our refrigerated stuff at the same temperature. So that's Linda's favorite, is that set power. But then there's one more, the third of the series that we believe in. Well, I can't say that because, like I say, they all work. But the third, there's one that we think is best all around, and that's the Bodega TWW55. It's larger, it's high quality. By the way, these all have excellent compressors in them, and you can check that out in their description. But the Bodega TWW55 has two separate coils, cooling coils in it, but it has a large compartment and a separator and a smaller compartment, but not a real small compartment. You can have the big compartment be a refrigerator and the small compartment be a freezer, two separate cooling coils and two separate thermostats on it with two different adjustments. Or the big compartment can be a freezer and the small compartment can be a refrigerator, or the whole thing can be a refrigerator, or the whole thing can be a freezer. It's extremely handy. We use it downstairs for our guests so they can have ice cream bars on one side and we'll put cold drinks on the other side. We've got it with us on this trip because I wanted ice cream and I wanted ice cubes, and they're both handy here. So we're going to be scooping ice cream out here. We've already had lunch and it's ice cream time now. So that Bodega TWW55 is just a great all-around refrigerator and freezer, especially for the price. So left side compartment is very large, and the freezer compartment is also big. I usually keep the freezer set at about 15 degrees. Right now it's right about, well, we've had it open, but if you set it at 0, it uses a lot of power, but at 15 degrees, it's very reasonable. It uses about under 30 watt hours per hour for the refrigerator and the freezer. If the refrigerator is at 35, 36 degrees, and if the freezer is at 15 degrees. And the Bodega is also the handiest one if you're going on extended backroads trips, or if you plan on camping for a long time without going back into a store, because it's larger. And Linda and I generally do road trips, so every 4 days we can make it to a store no problem. But if we were just coming out to the woods to camp for a while, we'd want that bigger refrigerator. And we'd probably want the freezer. Wow, you couldn't get up that. No way. Too steep. Yeah. Like, look for some burls. See if we can find any while we're out and about.
I was looking yesterday.
Yeah, that might be kind of cool. We could make a Cusca or something.
Right there. There's a deep hole over there.
About 3 or 4 trees blowing down right there all together. We've come up to an area where there was a microburst. Yeah, it's blocked the road. And there's just thousands of trees down in here, all laying in the same direction. A microburst is when you get a huge cumulonimbus cloud that extends way up 40, 50,000 feet. And inside it's raining. It gets that column of air moving down, and coming out the bottom is a super cooled column of air heading straight for the ground. By the time it reaches the ground, there may not be any rain associated with it or anything. But the column of air is plummeting towards the ground at 100 miles an hour, maybe faster, I don't know. But when it hits the ground all intense like that, it may only be of a quarter mile in circumference or something like that, or in diameter. A micro burst, but they're intense. And when they hit the forest like this, they knock the trees down all in one direction, pulling them out by the roots and snapping them off. And you can see that when you're exploring like this. This one snapped off right off its roots. That one just broken off about 10 or 12 feet from the ground. I see you're picking up rocks.
Look at all the straight lines.
It's some kind of shale, yeah?
Yeah. But,
Let me see that piece.
well, this one is, you can see the layers. Looks like a sculpture of a mountain.
Yeah, I can tell that one's going in your pocket.
This way, look.
That's a mountain, isn't it? It's from a mountain, a belted mountain from the Big Belt Mountains right there.
Need more.
That's where we're at, in the Big Belt Mountains of Montana.
And I have enough rocks in his head. I don't need this one.
It turned into a nice day. Didn't start out that way. Well, it did. It started out very clear skies and everything. But outside was 34 degrees this morning, and we were expecting a low of 45. And inside the trailer was 44. So I had to get up in the cold and light the stove and warm it up. Then we just stayed inside until the temperature warmed up a bit outside. Now it's very pleasant. It's probably 75 degrees. That's Montana. Hey, it's been fun having you guys along. We've had fun thinking about you as we've been exploring around here and getting in trouble. And it's her fault. I haven't figured out how, but somehow it was her fault.
Yeah, it's me.
Anyways, be sure to like, share, and subscribe, and
See you on the next one.
see you on the next one.
Aloha.